I've had this conversation 100 times before. That was very well and good back then, but that's not how it works anymore. For the times they have changed, I can tell you that for sure. However much you say it's so, that's not how it works anymore. What-o, folks, Thomas Benjamin Wilde Esquire here with song number 28 of my Song a Week project. This was actually a new song. It's not going to be included on the album at all. So you've heard most of the album tracks now. I'm now going to start doing the brand new songs again. And this one was inspired by a conversation I overheard on a train journey a couple of months ago, where, from what I could glean was going on, there was a father or a grandfather talking to someone on the other end of a phone, explaining to them how all they needed to do at their work, because it seemed like someone had quit and the other person had been given extra responsibilities. And the advice that they were getting given was to, take those extra responsibilities. Eventually, it'll mean you're paid more. And I couldn't help but think, actually, in my experience of that, I just got extra responsibilities and no extra pay at all. So it kind of, it was inspired off the back of that one. And I started writing some lyrics for verses for this. So I'm on the way to it being a longer song. And I thought it might be quite interesting to hear other people's experiences of this kind of thing. I know young people are constantly being told how they should and shouldn't be doing things. But actually, a lot of the time, the ways that are being suggested to them, in all good intentions by parents and grandparents and the like, perhaps don't really relate to current experiences of life and work. Lots of people do it about houses as well, about how you can get your foot on the property ladder. It's not that simple anymore, unfortunately. Even in the last 10 to 15 years, I wouldn't want to be trying to get onto the property ladder now. I can only imagine how difficult it must be. So yes, it was inspired by that. And I'm sure there's lots and lots of situations that people can think of where they've had to actually turn around and say, do you know what, that's not how it works anymore. I seem to remember the other times that I've experienced this, where I used to teach media production, kind of film and television production, at college and university level. And we'd have guest speakers coming in, and they were quite often guest speakers with a wealth of experience within the industry. But what the students were interested in was the advice they could give on how to break into the industries. And there wasn't really a huge amount they could give, because when they started out kind of 30, 40 years ago, it was a different place. It was a completely different thing. I know people who 30, 40, 50 years ago walked onto film sets and because they had a certain skill were just given a job. And that's not how it works anymore. Music industry has completely changed in the last 20 years or so as well. So getting any kind of advice from people that know the old ways is quite difficult. So it'd be quite interesting to hear what your experiences and your takes on this are. And it might inspire some other verses for this as well. I played this on my Duke 10 banjolele. If you're interested in getting hold of one of these yourself, there's a link in the description where you can find out more about it. And you can also get a bit of a discount. Thank you for all the comments on the last video for These Old Streets. Some lovely comments and a couple of questions here as well. So Franco Walker 4662 says, beautiful song. Glad you had a good holiday. Thank you very much. Dan Forbes 3573 says, I can relate to this song immensely. I moved from Harrogate in North Yorkshire to Fleet in Lincolnshire in 96-97. Quarter of a mile away is Holbeach Town, where I used to do my shopping. Holbeach used to have about 7 pubs. Had fond memories down the station. Loads of great local bands played there on a Saturday night. Yeah, so lots of people sharing their memories of specific places that have changed now, which is essentially what that last song was about. It's some interesting comments there. Thomas Wilkinson 3241 says, beautiful song. Thank you for your great music. Thank you very much for that, Thomas. The Mystifying 177 says, yes, my new favourite. Thank you for your creation of music. Love it. Well, I'm glad you appreciate that one. I'm always a little bit unsure about the more serious songs that I write. So it's nice to hear that people are actually enjoying them. Copenhagen Rail Production says, you did the theme better than what I did with my City Nostalgia song lyrics. Bravo, my man. I will have to check that out. I'd be interested to see a song on a similar theme to that. So I'll have to check that out. Is it? I'm assuming it's on YouTube somewhere. I'll go and check through your profile and have a look. Commander Ernie Paul says, I moved back to my old town almost 20 years ago. It's still strange to remember what used to be. My grade school is now a community centre. The auto parts store is a Walmart. And the old-fashioned burger place is a pizza chain. Yeah, I can relate to that massively. I moved away from Bedford, where I currently live, and where I grew up, and spent a few years in London and Brighton. And then coming back and being quite surprised by how things had changed, even in that short amount of time. So it definitely wasn't 20 years. But yeah, so that was quite interesting. Zosso14892 says, I've got a holiday booked next year. My mum, brother, myself, and our assorted family are all going to Scarborough. I've not been since I was a kid in the 90s, so I wonder if this song could ring true then. I imagine it probably will. I've only been to Scarborough once in the late 80s, early 90s. So I can't remember anything about it really. But yeah, I imagine you probably, but you might also be quite surprised by the stuff that's still there as well. Barano Corey says, as one of my friends who didn't move from where we grew up, seeing their reactions when they come back to visit is almost as good as exploring places when they change. Any places you thought would never change but ended up being better after the adjustment period? So actually, funnily enough, Bedford. When I moved away, I was a little bit sick of the sight of it. And we lived in Brighton for quite a while, which on the face of it is a very exciting city. And London's a very exciting city. However, I found myself getting a little bit tired with both those places. And when we moved back, I mean, we were a little bit disappointed when we did move back to Bedford because it felt a little bit like kind of having to come back home and a bit of a failure. But then we realised how easy the community is here. How easy it is to get involved within things that are happening in Bedford as well. And actually at that point, there'd been kind of investments that were being made, which made it a much nicer place to live. It's going back downhill again now. But definitely during that time when we moved back around 2007, I think we were quite pleasantly surprised by what was here. James Wright 4322 says, what was the first album that you played so much until you couldn't stand to listen to it any longer? Also, what first turned your interest towards the ukulele? Great questions. So I had a habit when I was younger of listening to albums until I was absolutely fed up of them. And so I haven't really returned to any of them in my later years because I got fed up with them. Probably the first one that I did that with was probably either Use Your Illusion 1 or Use Your Illusion 2 by Guns N' Roses, because I would start them, play them through, listen to them again, and that would be all I would listen to for a certain period of time. Did the same thing with Nevermind by Nirvana, Park Life by Blur. So yeah, there's plenty of albums. I used to have a bit of a habit of doing that with anything that I got into. I'm just able to start listening to some of those again now. But yeah, it was definitely a habit I got into with most of the albums I listened to in my youth. So in terms of what turned my interests to the ukulele, actually my partner bought me one quite a while ago because she felt guilty that she'd been shopping in town and needed to buy me something. So she popped into the music shop and asked them what they'd got in there for about 20 quid. And they gave her a ukulele. And she brought it home as a present for me, purely for feeling guilty for how much she'd spent in town. But I decided to learn it. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that when I started doing some hosting that I started to play it properly because it meant I didn't have to write jokes. So by accident, really, is why I started playing the ukulele. But I've just found that it is an instrument that's quite easy just to pick up and chuck back down again, and easy to write songs with. So essentially that's what turned me to the ukulele. I play the guitar as well. I've never been a great guitar player. It's a bit louder and a bit more cumbersome. And the uke I can just very easily just sit in the living room and strum away on. So essentially that's why I started playing the ukulele. And then I got a banjolele because they looked a little bit more flashy. As I always say, keep those questions coming. It makes these videos a lot more interesting, and it means I'm not just rambling on about any old subject. Now, if you're interested in hearing the songs from my new upcoming album before anybody else, basically in their demo stage, you can join my Patreon community for as little as £3 a month and have access to all kinds of exclusive materials, like the demo tracks of the new songs, also exclusive live streams from shows, chats on Zoom, which I haven't done for a while, which I will do again very soon. So yeah, follow the link in the description. I've got various shows coming up in the next month or so. On Saturday the 19th of October, I'm going to be in Barnsley at the Birdwell venue as part of the Big Day Out, which is a one-day festival, all kinds of fantastic acts, hosted by the excellent Mr. Scott Dunican and the Bar Steward Sons of Val Dunican. If you're in the area, it'd be lovely to see you at that. I'll be on about 2:30, I think. So keep an eye out. That is subject to change, so get there early. Lots of other great bands playing there as well. On Saturday, the 2nd of November, I'm going to be in Hull at the New Adelphi Club with my band, the Fancy Chaps. And we're also going to be bringing along our good friends, the Sweet Chunks Band, who are an absolutely fantastic band. If you've not seen them before, go and check them out. They're on YouTube and on the various social media platforms. But yes, we're doing a bunch of shows together. That should be very exciting. And that's on the Saturday, the 2nd of November at the New Adelphi Club in Hull. Then on Friday the 8th of November, I'm going to be in Hastings, which is quite a new show that's popped up at St Andrew's Mews. That's going to be a solo show, and it's also going to be free. So if you're in the Hastings area and you fancy coming along, check out the details for that. And that's about it from me for this week. If you are interested in joining my Patreon community, you can follow the link in the description. If you're interested in getting hold of a Duke 10 banjolele, again, link is in the description with a bit of a discount, and also links to details about all the shows that I've got coming up over the rest of 2024. It'd be lovely to see you out and about. If not, stay safe, and until next time, toodle pip.